Throughout the world of Blue Lock, we have had many characters who've had their own evolution into being their own egoist. Characters like Bachira Meguru for his dribbling, characters like Chigiri Hyumo for his speed, and none other than Kunigami Rensuke, who's currently going through his emo phase, if I'm not going to hold you. But there is one character whose path to egoism cannot be denied, and it's who this video's topic is about today. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the egoist, none other than Isagi Yoichi. Delve into the video and explore the journey of how Isagi's egoism started and truly escalate into the heights that it is today. In chapter 1, we are shown Isagi going through his game through the Nationals. And in that game, he's met up against a goalkeeper, along with, of course, him giving the opportunity to pass the ball to his teammate. Isagi, going with the mindset one for all and all for one, he completely passes the ball to his teammate, which inevitably costed him the game, causing Kira Ryosuke to score. And of course, the realization of his loss doesn't really hit him until he goes home, where in the most random moment, he screams at the top of his lungs, crying, telling Noel Noah, well, not really telling him, but telling him in his own mind that he couldn't become the world's best striker. However, that would all change when going home and given the opportunity to become the world's best striker, as he gains a letter to go to the Blue Lock facility, where his path to egoism truly begins. After, of course, he's met through Ego Jinpachi, where Ego Jinpachi explains the whole purpose of Blue Lock, and that is to score more goals than anyone. Isagi, of course, hearing everything he says, and of course with Ego sort of picturing exactly what Isagi had went through, except turning it into the hypothetical one if Isagi took their shot. This would all culminate with Isagi deciding that right then and there, he will be the world's best striker, running towards an unknown future and abandoning all common sense for what happens next. Now, there are a total of 4 matches that, of course, Team Z goes through in the first selection phase, and I'd figured that they just highlight only 2 of them. That being, of course, the first match he has against Baro, and of course the last match he has against Zantetsu, Rail, and Nagi, as those 2 matches highlight, of course, the weaknesses that he goes through, and of course the awakening that he goes through, truly fibering his being into becoming the world's best striker. Of course, the match against Baro completely was a one-sided wash in Baro's favor, as Baro's mere presence on the field alone, tied with him going with the philosophy that he is the king of the field and that everyone around him is peasants, completely caused Isagi's team to go through the one-sided massacre again. It got to a point where essentially the main goal of the match wasn't even just win, it was just to essentially just score 1 goal, just to show out as much as they could. Leading to, of course, Isagi going face-to-face with Baro, and instead of taking the shot, he passes it to Kunigami, who ultimately takes the shot, and of course, Baro, being the man that he is, calls out Isagi and completely disrespects him, telling him that he has no talent as an athlete. I wanted to briefly go over his match with Nico, as I feel as if that match highlights exactly Baro's point. During his match against Nico, he's presented with a sort of mirror match, in the sense that Nico is just like him, just on the defender position, consistently trying to find ways to crush forwards. However, thanks to Isagi, Nico isn't afraid to change, as he himself states that during the U20 game. And this all starts with this match, as after going against Nico and winning, this would finally give Isagi the push he needed to, instead of passing the ball when faced up against the goal, completely be the one taking the shot, which of course lead into, of course, his match with Nagi, Reo, and Zantetsu, as of course we get his infamous debut of the direct shot. Now, going into his match against Nagi, Zantetsu, and Reo, there were a lot of problems they had to overcome. More specifically, after what Kuon did during Team W's match, it was essentially a 10 versus 12, or 10 versus 11. With, of course, the added disadvantage that Nagi's actually exists, since Nagi's mere existence on the field caused a lot of problems, as despite him not knowing anything at soccer, he was just good at it. There was no way to sugarcoat it. And of course, this would cause a lot of problems, as with him being this natural prodigy who had no motivation whatsoever, along with Rail being someone who had the brains to keep up with a lot of other characters,
combined with Zantetsu being one of the only characters at this point in time to be able to not only outrun Shiggy, but tag him multiple times. So of course, Team V would cause a lot of problems. However, in this intense match, everyone begins to awaken, leading to, of course, Isagi's awakening, which, of course, nearly gets completely offset by Nagi's awakening, as Nagi nearly shuts him down at one point. However, due to him wanting to finally score the goal on his own accord, he completely decides to take the shot for himself, beginning, of course, his infamous direct shot, leading to him scoring the goal against Team V, and, of course, advancing Team Z to the second selection. After their win against Team V, and of course moving on to the second selection arc, where Isagi faced against his biggest challenge yet, the number one player in Blue Lock, Itoshi Rin. And during his match against Itoshi Rin, long story short, Isagi gets dock-locked, as Rin completely makes a fool of him and completely just violates him throughout it. There was not a single ounce of hope for him, as even after scoring the 2 goals with the help of Nagi and Bachira, and of course Nagi and Bachira's chemical reaction, it essentially just went straight to hell, as once Rin completely figured out Isagi after the first play, he essentially made Isagi believe that he was sort of leading the field, only to then blow it up in his face, manipulating Isagi, which is a feat in itself, to essentially cause Isagi to, well, just basically think that he just sort of loses at that point. So of course it's a feat within itself, so Isagi stood no chance. And of course, after this loss, it all results in, of course, Bachira being taken from him, and of course him being moved down to the 2v2, where of course he climbs to the top to try to get back Bachira and effectively beat Rin again, or attempt to at the very least. And on his way to the top, he goes through a lot of matches. His match against Naruhaya, as he completely beats him after learning, of course, his weakness being his blind spot, and learning, of course, the off-the-ball movement. His second, of course, going against, of course, Reo, Chigiri, and Kunigami, was him, Nagi, and Baro, where in that match, he sort of devours Baro, essentially using him to gain any goals as he needs to see fit, which would all finally culminate with him getting to the top and going against Rin. And in that match, Isagi's evolution keeps skyrocketing, as he simply goes from someone who couldn't even understand Rin's plays in the first second to someone who was able to not only understand Rin's plays, but completely devour him by learning everything he's able to do. It came to such a point where it had, of course, Bachira shot at a different angle, and had Isagi blocked it at a different angle, he would have effectively won against Rin. However, fate had a cruel victor in mind, and of course, Rin's lucky goal was something that cannot be understated. As once Rin scores that goal, rather than taking Shigiri Hyoma for his speed, rather than taking the king Baro Shoei for his insane physical strength and chop dribbles, rather than take the potential genius that is Nagi Seishido, he takes Yoichi Isagi as someone who knows he could beat, or as someone who has effectively came the closest since his brother Itoshi's side to beating him at that point, which would of course lead to Isagi, Rin, Bachira, Tokimitsu, and Audio going against the World 5, which would of course lead to Isagi losing, and of course learning exactly his fundamental aspect that he needed to learn how to control, that being of course luck, as during his match against Rin, it was only luck that caused Rin to get lucky, or sorry, no pun intended, as it caused Rin to sort of be able to score the goal in the first place, which would of course lead to him going against Rin and Shido, where of course learning from Hiyori, where Hiyori completely states to learn how to effectively move before thinking, Isagi decides to move before thinking, leading to him, of course, partially accessing, Metavision for the first time, which would all finally culminate within him stealing the goal between both Shido and Rin, and of course solidifying his place in the Japan U20 game. Now, I wanted to briefly go over the Japan U20 game, as, of course, that is the highlight and the greatest game of Blue Lock, as in that match, everyone develops into such astronomical levels that it's pretty much unreal. And Isagi doesn't really go to too much of a development, however, I figured I'd talk about it as it's very much noteworthy, as the only 3 developments that at this time was noteworthy was him being acknowledged by Itoshi Sai, him completely having to deal with, of course, Oliver Aiku, and of course him using Ring and of course getting lucky to score the game-winning finisher. As those 3 factors were the only things I could sort of find with his path to egoism. However, after the Japan U20 game, and of course after telling the world that he will become the world's best striker and lead Japan to, of course, win the World Cup, it would all finally culminate within him, of course, going back to Blue Lock 3 weeks after the Japan U20 game, which would effectively lead him to join the Neo-Egoist League, deciding to join the team of the world's best striker, Bastard Munich, with its leader being Noel Noah, who, in fact, as of this recent recording, is actually, of course, a former rival of Jinpachi Ego. So there's some food for thought, understandably so. And of course, once he enters into the Neo-Egoist League, he's completely, of course, taken by storm, as he's met with a new rival in mind, and someone who sort of just, for lack of a better word, just fucks him very much. And that being, of course, one of the people who's in New Gen World 11, Michael Kaiser, who, of course, we learn later on, possesses Metavision, along with, of course, his cool, if not deadly weapon, the Kaiser Impact, which, as Noel Noah states, is the fastest shot swing throughout the entire world. And that even though he is the world's #1, he is not coming close to a fast as hell shot swing that Michael Kaiser possesses, which of course fuels the rivalry between him and Kaiser even more, as throughout the 2 matches we see Bastard Munich going against FC Barca and of course Manshine City, it all culminates within him of sort of awakening with each game. Well, of course, in the Manshine City game. In the game against, of course, FC Barca, he's completely rejected by pretty much everyone. In fact, it came to a point where, just to spite Kaiser, he gives the ball to Kunigami just to score the goal, because passing it to Kaiser was already him admitting defeat at that point. However, his match against Manshine City is where Isagi's development truly shines, as he gains the ability to learn Metavision. As once he accesses Metavision, it completely changes him from someone who had a hard time keeping up with everyone in Bastard Munich and only being subbed in just because of fan demand, to someone who is completely able to be this force and dominant player. I mean, hell, in recent chapters, he's been dubbed as the man of the match throughout the Manshine City game. And of course, with him learning his final piece with his Metavision, that being his egocentrism, he finally was able to, of course, access the necessary tools he needs to finally beat Kaiser. Which would lead us into, of course, the end of this video. This is the first time I made a video like this. You also can tell my voice seems a bit different because I've been editing this video for a while, and you know, I want to make sure this thing looked a lot better. I had to redo a lot of stuff, had to learn a lot of stuff, but I'm ultimately proud of how I made it. For the first time I made a video like this, I don't think I could have done a bit better, or rather I could do a lot better, but I'm glad how I liked it where it is right now. With that being stated, comment down below like how I can improve, and my better things I should and could improve on. And yeah, with the Ubers match coming out soon, I'm very hyped because Waro seems to be this just dangerous player now, and I'm even more curious to see how can he go up against Metavision with Aiku, and of course Nico on his side, and then of course Mark Snuffy. So yeah, with all that being stated, like, comment, and subscribe. I want to reach 1,000 subscribers for the end of the year, and I want to keep just making content that I'm a lot more proud of. So yeah. Love you guys, and no outro, so I'll see you hopefully next week, because I have a lot of videos planned for the future.